Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Book to Block, the series where I bring my fantasy novel to life in Minecraft, one block at a time. In this episode, we're going to do another episode before we get back to working on the volcano. We're going to be working on the plains today. As you can see, it's very bare, except for the village and the mountain. You can't really see too much activity going on because it's just a boring kind of flat plains. So in today's episode, I'm going to work on prettying it up a little bit, getting a little bit more detail, adding in a little bit more just anything, just a bit of the grass we see with the bone mealing, or just any structures or things like that. I've got a couple ideas I'm going to work on, and maybe I'll get a couple more as I'm building. I might think of something new, or maybe I'll see something while scrolling through social media or anything, and just come up with an idea to add to spice up the plains a little bit. So let's get into it. Alright, so the first thing we're going to work on here is the path outside of the city. So this one that's on the other side, so we got the entrance from the village over here and the way out of the mountains there. But I want to kind of mark this off so that I don't accidentally build something here in the way. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to go along here. I want to lower the scale actually, probably to 2. And I'm just going to go into the forest like this. So I want to get a little bit more shape on it because this path is going to be running alongside this lava lake here. So then I'm going to go elevation and lower this, try and get a better view, and just kind of work on making the path that the lava will flow as well. Just making it kind of curved a little bit, get a little bit of shape into it as I go along. Want it slightly deep, not super deep. And then after I get this, open it up, I can now go to the flood fill, and I want to kind of fill it in here. So I'm going to change my active block to lava. I'm going to get a good view so I don't accidentally do too much. As you can see here, it's going to grab all the things that are like light blue. So I kind of want to lower everything a little bit more. All right, let's try it again. All right, that seems decent to start. And then I'll do just that and that for now. And I can manually go in and grab a bit more. I'll have to make it all the same level, so it is here already. Oop, too low. So I want to bring the lava up to this level, so I'll go along, see if there's any points. Yeah, so if I hop back up here, I want to do this. And then let's get this out of the way. Just manually do it for now. And then it'll go into the forest, so I'll have to clear out an area and then do that bit, but that's later. This is more working on the plains this episode. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to work on the kind of erosion that's caused by the volcanic activity, so where I've got this mix of grass and then the blackstone. So to do that, it's kind of a noise painter, but I can also maybe try it with the gradient tool. So if I use blackstone and then grass, let's see how that looks. So right now that's just a very plain flat, but if I go in, where is it? I want to do a Bezier. I think that might work. There we go. So it's more dense at this end than it is at this end. So it kind of works like that. If I go along like this, I can make it look a little bit more like it's petering out and getting less kind of dense of the blackstone as it goes. So that looks a little bit better than before. Because with these, it looks just very structured and things like that. So I'm going to go up to about here. And then what I have to do is I have to do it along here as well, because the lava is also going to be destroying the grass. What I could do is if I get some coarse dirt, toss that in the middle here. So if I go like this, other way around, start there and then drag towards, that looks even better. So I'll probably do that along here as well. So there. And then I can kind of go into the lava a little bit because it's below, but that's getting the blackstone below it. So I can get all the way up to the edge without having to worry about getting any grass on the edge here. So I'm just going to go around, kind of do it all the way around here, try and keep it close-ish to the side here, and while getting rid of all this kind of grass you can see here. So making sure I don't leave any behind, and having about the same distance. So as you can see, it's like the number going on is like 40 here. So I want to keep the same all the way around. So go about 40 and drag, just so it looks kind of consistent. Like here, I might want to go a little bit further so that it kind of matches up with the spread. Alright, now that we're flying around, it looks a lot more decayed instead of just that very smooth exit of that. Now, what I kind of want to do is I want to go in with I think it's the magma block. So I think this would add a little bit of light to this. So I'm thinking I'll do noise painter, but I'll remove everything but the magma. And then I will keep it at a low percentage. And then, let's see. I'm going to try it first without a mask, see how it looks. I think it would look best if I check at night, so let's toss that in. So that does add a bit of color to the outside, so let's go along in the nighttime and do this. Just on the kind of edge here where it's all the black stone, so just to break up the pattern a little bit. And just go all the way around, add, it's only about 2.5% of the area I'm covering. Can obviously lower that later. I think this will be really good when I go around the lava. So once we get along here, just quickly go along, get on the edge. Oh, it looks like I hit the wall. Gotta make sure I don't do that. Now I can kind of go along the edge here, just so the lava isn't the only color. It doesn't matter if I go underneath, because you can't see it through the lava anyways. And then, I guess, I'll just do a little bit here, and then I'll do the rest kind of as I get further up. I can kind of do it along this path here, if this loads in properly. There we go. So I'll do it along the lava path here, as well as the one over here, once everything's kind of built up around it, so that I don't like mess anything up. Alright, now that we kind of have the city, I like the outskirts kind of fitting a little bit better, looking a little bit more, I could expand it a little bit further depending on how open this area feels. So once I finish doing all the little bits in this episode, all the little builds and stuff, I might come back and extend it, so make it a lot further out, so that the kind of dirt reaches further out than it is right now. But something I mentioned very early on, I don't remember which episode it is, but I mentioned that around the kind of outskirts of the city, I'm going to have a burnt down forest. Like the lava kind of got to it, and then it's just kind of a husk of a forest. So I want to choose an area. I don't want to kind of mess with my outer forest here. I want it to be kind of like an inland forest, similar to this one, just not as big, just like a tiny little one. So I'm going to come up here, I'm going to turn off the clouds by turning off my shaders here, just so I can see it a little bit better. Probably should have done that, because now I have to reload everything, so give me a second whilst I reload this. Alright, so I've reloaded all the planes, except for the volcano, and then everything kind of on the outskirts. I'll probably need a little bit of this area here, so let it load in. If you guys know of a better way of loading lots of terrain at once, please let me know if it's like a mod or something. I've got a couple, but they don't seem to work very fast, and as you can see, they don't work unless I go really close to them. But without ignoring that, we'll move on. So I've got lots of area here. So let's just fly up very high. That's the world height limit, the build limit there. That green kind of checkerboard, or not checkerboard, the grid line there. But looking at all this area, so I've got the forest here, so I don't want to add another forest right beside it. So this area is crossed off for that. I've got kind of the entrance here. but it might make a good visual when coming down this way if you have like a burnt out forest right about here. Because the other areas are a little bit too small, like fly over here. So this area is a little too small, too small. I might be able to get maybe 2 forests in. So I think I'm going to make the forest in here. So what we got to do for that is we got to kind of design the forest itself. So like how I did episodes for these trees and those trees, I'm just going to do a quick little insert of dead trees. What I could do is I could just take those trees, copy them, remove all the leaves, maybe change the wood type, because now that we have this kind of pale oak, this one kind of works as kind of like a burnt out tree. It looks sort of like dead and things. So I'll maybe go around and do that, and then we can see how that looks. But before we get into the kind of forest, so I'm thinking I'm going to fix up the plains a little bit, because as you can see, it's a little bit messy. Just because all I did when I originally did this is I took elevation tool, raise, kind of made it a bit bigger, and then just went like this. So it looks very messy, and then on the edge, as you can see on the edge, it makes very sharp corners. So I tried fixing that by just using the smoothing tool, but even that didn't fix it fully. But recently, in my last episode where I worked on the path up there, that's kind of where it is over here, I used the distort tool to kind of fix up the land. So I want to see if that kind of works. It makes it a little bit more vanilla-esque of like the up and down. It does make it look very messy, but now let's see if I now go in with the smoothing tool on this way. It's a little bit laggy, but let's see if that fixes it. So comparing this to this looks a lot more choppy. Yes, looking at the ground for it, this feels a little bit more like Minecraft, but these kind of, like if I go over here, I think the problem right now is it's too flat. I need more hills like this. So I'm going to go around, add a couple of these in, destroy, and then smooth it out. Alright, so what I did is I kind of came along here with a large radius of elevation, kind of brought up a little bit around so it's less flat, and then I went in with the smoothing tool, fix that all up. Now what I'm doing is I'm lowering the radius tool and getting a little bit more just anywhere that feels too flat, I just make a hill. So just go around here like that. Here's a little flat, so I'm gonna maybe do like a little L shape, a little bend. And what this does, if I come back in here and I lower the strength, I don't want it too high, and just paint over these, it fixes them up, and now we have some taller kind of mountains. It's a little laggy if you can see, this is real time. I move my mouse and then it takes a half second to second for it to catch up. That's just because it's changing so much blocks and doing like all the math, I guess, to fix it all up. But now if I come down here, this looks a lot like taller, so we're getting those 10 highs and things like that. Whereas like if I were to come over here, area I haven't touched yet, let's just compare these two. This is so flat compared to this. This looks like kind of a rolling hill, where this is just like, I guess you could see this in like in a plains, but it feels very artificial, like it's been flattened on purpose. So it could be like maybe like a farmland or something. I want this to be like a kind of natural area that's just left to nature. Alright, so I've done a bit of thinking, and I think I'm actually going to expand the spruce forest in that corner, or over here. But instead, I'm going to do what my plan was turning it into pale oak, but these are all the 10 different trees I have designed over time for this forest here. So I've taken them here, and I'm going to turn them into the dead versions. So first, there. Alright, so no more leaves. Now this is just the basic kind of with the shell of each of them that I made, some better than others. This one I don't think is going to work, so I'm going to go through and choose the ones that I don't want. So these are very basic, so remove these. Again, another one that's just a plank. And now we've got a couple different variations that'll give a bit of differences. I'm going to remove all these flower pots because we don't need the kind of acorns. I think I got them all. Oh, 2 more up top. And 1 hiding behind here. Alright, so now we have 5 different trees. So next what I've got to do is I've got to change it into the pale oak versions. And here we are. So gone along and replaced all the little bits with the pale, missed a couple here. Problem is, I don't know if this white, because we don't really have a gray fence, so if we look at the different fence types here, so we got like the darker colors in the dark oak and the nether brick, some weird colors in these guys. The white is just too bright for this. I mean, let's see what it looks like with the dark oak. I guess not the nether. So let's swap these. So that just feels way too contrasting when you come to it. So what I'm going to do is I am going to select. So if I create a little mask up here, let's remove all this. So I'll go with this block, and then I want to grab the fences. So let's select this, bring these in here, and also with these fence gates. If I can grab one. A little harder to click. There we go. So now if I select all this and just delete it off. Fill in these, and got the replace tool on. That kind of thing. So now that removes another one. So we'll have to get rid of this one because it's just a plain stick. What I could do is just do a slightly slanted one. So let's go up a few and then like that, just to kind of fill in the gaps. So now we've got a couple of different trees that I can use to fill in this area. So let's quickly add these all in. But first, actually, let's prepare the ground. Because this is going to be a dead burnt forest, you shouldn't have grass. So I'm going to have to kind of create like a little deadlands area. Up my speed. So my thinking of what caused this is maybe this river here used to come through here. So I'll maybe prepare just an empty area before the people, the dwarves of this city, kind of blocked it off and stopped it. So maybe there'll be a gate here, like the one I have over on this side, loaded in. Sort of like I've got here. So I'll copy this over and bring it over to this side. But instead of having lava flow through, it'll be shut off. And then just kind of like an empty chasm, like where a lake usually would have gone, that kind of leads over here. And then it'll have like the ignition point. So the edge of the forest will be around here. So I'm thinking about this size, so not huge, but enough to take up enough space, so I don't have so much empty area like I do now. Because, well, having a bit of plain that's nice, you don't want it to be just empty. Because if you look at this, actually, if we head down to this is the way I get down to my planning room. If I go here, if you just look at this, it's just very empty, where there's no places. I mean, this is a little bit older of a map. The path has changed. The kind of plains won't be this flat now that I've kind of added more depth to it. Plus, the volcano hasn't been updated with all those buildings. But this kind of gives you a good idea of how flat the whole area is. So let's head back. Using our teleport system, I guess we'll go to the main city. So that brings us here, and we can start prepping the land. So I'm going to do something similar to what I have here, where it's going to be using all the dead grass. Well, not grass, but the dirt. So a mix so if I go to the dirts, so I'll use coarse and rooted. I can't use regular because if it's near any grass, it'll just spread and that'll just ruin the whole thing. So I have to create a kind of area. I'll come down below the clouds using a noise painter, check my inventory, and then drag these over. So I don't want it to be like that. I want it to be about 50-50. We're going to up the scale slightly, obviously radius slightly, so that it's big more patches of it. So now if I just kind of scribble along the land. So now this is more of a dead area. So that looks a little bit better. I'm going to combine this so that the kind of the patch goes towards it and remove all this kind of grass, because I don't want it to be like in between a grass and this. I want this to, because this area is all dead. There's no grass fighting back to try and reclaim all this dirt. So I'm going to have to go in. I'll use my lower, similar how I did earlier with the other one. I want it to be a little bit smaller. And it's just going to be a kind of path like this. So we can easily see where the path of the lava usually would have been. And now I can have like the forest, so now I know where the forest is going to start. I can kind of fill in this gap here. So this will be the kind of forest. Maybe just, I'll probably have to roughen up the edges. I don't want it to be too smooth. And then what I'll do is I'll do the same thing with the gradient. But instead of the black stone, I'm going to use the coarse dirt and then the rooted dirt as well. Put these up, and then let's see. All right, other way around. No, just did the same thing again. There we go. So now this will give a little bit of just a variation so it doesn't look like a sharp change. So I'll go around and do this quickly. All right, now that we've got the kind of edge working, I'm going to go in, not the noise painter, just the regular one, just to paint up where the lake used to be. It's kind of got the volcanic bits to it, so I can kind of mix in, smooth out this kind of curved area, just so I know kind of where that is. It gives a good look to it. I can then go in, I'll use what I did earlier with my, let's see if I can click it. There we go, the magma block. About maybe a little bit more. And I can kind of just paste these along here. I guess I want a lower scale, so let's bring that back. And just down the center. It's still like hot spots of heat left over from ages when lava used to flow. So I'll have to get that gate in here and then connect those up. But now that we've got kind of the area, I've got to work on this area. So I'm going to select just the grass with a mask. And then I can kind of just select the grass. I'll quickly scroll around. Maybe I'll make the scale a little bit bigger so I can get all of it. And then at least this far. And that should be good. Now, let's see. Let's try first replacing it. Let's do it with the coarse dirt and see how that looks. Alright, that's something. I think maybe I'll mix in a bit of the rooted as well. So if I go to this, and then I grab my two dirts, so coarse, rooted, and then do about a 50-50 low scale, and then just scribble in these areas. Make the radius much bigger so I can do it all quickly. Alright, now take a look at that. That looks a lot better, a lot more messy, kind of fits a little bit better. So now let's go in and add in some trees. Alright, so that is the forest done. So of course I can add in some more details, sort of like if I go and it's hard to do the kind of on top of stuff because it's on different blocks. So like when I'm doing my bone mealing, I'm not actually going to run around with bone meal in hand. I'm going to do something where it's like, so what you do is you grab a below with whatever block you have on there. You then select, so I do freehand select, so every block that has a grass block below it, so that'll be all the air blocks. And then you change it out for a block equals air, and then you can grab your painter or noise painter and paint in. So obviously this is a little bit too much, so what you do is you lower the percentages, so it's the total is less than 100%. Because for this, if it's 20 and 20, there'll be 40% of the area will be these blocks, which means 60% will be left alone. So it'll be left as air. So I can kind of go along with this. One less, so you lower it down. And that looks like a good kind of mix. So if you compare it to over here, this is a little bit more dense. This is kind of like the wildlands. I'm going to go in, add in a couple more different types of like the grasses. So I can come into the natural blocks, scroll through, see if there's anything good. So I want a bush, fern, short grass. The tall ones are harder to do because you need to select 2 blocks, otherwise it'll just cut it in half. So it's a little harder to do it on a large scale. So you can maybe go in later and manually place in a couple, if that's what you want for a bit of variation in height. But this looks good enough for the blocks I want, so I'm going to add in this low percentage, lower it a little bit more since now we've got more. So I'm doing about 10% is going to be these blocks, and then the rest is air. So with this, that's a little low, so just bump it up. So just play around until you get the number or the look that you want for this. And there we go. So then for this one, what I would do, so I'll deselect, and then I'll put an OR with below, change this to the coarse, and then if I grab another below and put this to rooted. So that means if the block below the block I'm selecting is either the coarse or the rooted, it'll allow it to be selected. So what I want is just to select all this. Now the problem might be it's selecting the blocks where my trees are. So I'm gonna have to put in another. All right, and I think that's it. So with this, I'm checking both these kind of brackets here. So I'm checking if the block below it is either these blocks as well as it's not going to be the pale oak, because I don't want to replace any of these. So now if I do this, it doesn't select. So like if I were to press delete, my trees don't get deleted. Whereas if I remove this and did that, it removes the bottom blocks of all my trees here. So this kind of fixes that problem. So let's go around and add in. So if we go to the natural blocks now, so I want the dry grass and dead bush. Let's see, anything else that would fit this kind of dead area. I could do maybe some of the dead corals, but I think this is good enough to start. So let's select a large area. So let's select basically all of it. All right, now let's go with the noise painter and put in these new ones. So I'll remove that bottom one, so we've got just these two. And let's make a large brush. And we want it to be kind of like a pattern. And then we got our change. So now we check if it is an airlock. And you can see all the blue, kind of faint blue there. That's where all the blocks are being placed. So if I let that go. Now if I come down here, we got little patches of this dead brush and such. So I think that really brings a little bit more color and a bit more detail to that. Alright, so I've gone along and done most of the planes here. You can see I've done over here a little bit. I've left this area and just this little corner over here alone for now, just in case I want to do anything special in this area. But I've gone around and added in all the grass and adjusted the planes for this area. So it's ready for more adjustments later on. But this episode's getting a little bit long, so I'm going to split this into a two-parter. So, as you can see, I've gotten a decent amount done in this episode, lots of prep ready to do a lot more finer details in the next episode. So in the next episode, I'm going to work on a couple more of my goals for the planes and hopefully finish off all the prettifying and just making it look a lot more natural opposed to this flat kind of barren area. So if you enjoyed today's episode, please leave a like and subscribe for more episodes coming soon. Until next time.